Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I'm excited to share with you one of my favorite topics, detoxification. This is, I think, a topic just so important to Alzheimer's because, well, for several reasons. One, we live in a toxic world, unfortunately, and in that, we all can use some extra support detoxifying. Whether we realize that we're being exposed to toxins or not, it is happening, and for some of us more than others. It's one of the things that I see with my Bredesen dementia patients that can move the needle fastest. The other thing I love about detoxifying, especially if you have something like mold or mercury, is that we can measure it and we can see these elevated levels and then they go away. It's so satisfying to watch those numbers drop, and I'll share some examples with you today. Then in addition, detox it's self-care. A lot of it feels like a spa day. So let's dive into some of the healthy, gentle detox that you can do for your brain health starting today. Just so everyone knows, there's definitely going to be replays available, and we're going to have time for some Q&A at the end of this, and we'll plan to go for about an hour. So hopefully you can see. Okay, there we go. There we go. All right, sorry about that. So I believe that Alzheimer's is optional. It's funny, I was talking to Dr. Bredesen just yesterday, and he was saying the same thing. He says 100% of Alzheimer's, or very close to it, is optional. And of course, the sooner we get started, the better. But even if you're already experiencing cognitive decline, the vast majority of the time, we see improvements. We see people actually improve their cognitive function, even in the stages of Alzheimer's, including mild cognitive impairment, and certainly with subjective cognitive impairment, where you yourself feel it, even though maybe we're not measuring it. The challenge is that it's hard to do, right? These things, many of them are common sense, like detoxification. We know that our body needs to detoxify, right? Every cell in our body eats and metabolizes and has waste. And so we know we need to get rid of this. Having a daily bowel movement is part of being human, and hopefully for you. And yet it's kind of uncommon practice that we emphasize it or put our effort on making sure that this is optimized, but it's part of optimizing our health. And so we have a handful of things that we do to help you get the support that you need to implement this. It can be really challenging, but so worth it. And for many people I talk to, they get that the Bredesen approach works. They've seen the science, they understand the concepts, and yet the practical implementation of it is what's so challenging. And so that's where we have some solutions to offer, and I'll talk you through those. So this is Dr. Bredesen at our grand opening of Marama out in here in San Diego, California. And he has just been phenomenally supportive, so helpful. And he's a pleasure to work with and to be collaborating with this on our mission to really change the narrative around what's possible for those suffering with dementia. You may know me from the June summits. So June is Alzheimer's Awareness Month, and I have just finished recording. In fact, that was why I was talking to Dr. Bredesen yesterday. He's my co-host again this year. And we are doing this again, June 13th through 19th. The summit will go live, and I have had so much fun interviewing so many neat and new people. There will be some familiar faces, but lots and lots of new faces and new information that's going to be available mid-June. And this will be, again, it's lots of information. It can feel a bit overwhelming, and we are here to support you, to help you prioritize these things, answer your questions, customize it for you, get you that extra hand holding if you need it, hold you accountable, and put all these pieces together so that you see the meaningful impact and change that the Bredesen protocol can bring. Why do I do this? I do this because of people like Patrice, one of my patients who recently came in after 10 months. I had seen her for the first time about a year ago, and she had a MoCA score of just 6. So a MoCA score is out of 30, normal is 26 and above, and it's a worksheet that you fill out where you draw a clock and you name some zoo animals, you do some pretty simple subtraction, you tell us where you are in the world and what day it is. And for her, of those 30 possible points, she was only able to answer 6 of those questions correctly. Now, fast forward 10 months, and she doubled that score, more than doubled, to a 13 out of 30. Now, how did she do it? Well, it was her son who was super helpful and supportive of her. And a lot of what she did was detoxify, get on a much better diet, although she never got into ketosis. She got on some bioidentical hormones, on supplements, and she took care of her sleep apnea. And so this was a really remarkable change. In fact, her neurologist didn't even believe it. But her son said to me, I have my mom back. And he shared with me this story of, of course, she cooked for him when he was young. And so he remembers her as very nurturing and a whiz in the kitchen. But she had forgotten basically how to cook for herself or where things were in the kitchen. And he said he watched her the other night pull a carrot peeler out of the drawer, use it to peel a carrot, and then stick it in the dishwasher. And this was so profound for him because he had watched his mom cook all of his life and then lose the ability to cook and then regain that ability to navigate the kitchen, use the tools in the kitchen, and basically maintain that ability to feed herself. This is dignity. These are those activities of daily living, right? He thought she might be, and her neurologist certainly thought she was on the path to needing help using the bathroom, needing help getting dressed in the morning. And yet here she was reversing that completely and actually starting to cook again. This was miraculous. And this was so exciting. And these are the types of results that I want to make available to everyone out there, because I believe that if we can catch Alzheimer's early, if we can catch that cognitive decline early, we can prevent the vast majority of Alzheimer's disease cases and so much of the suffering that comes with it. So at Marama is the residential care facility for the elderly that I created. We have one here in Vista, and then we've just opened another facility in Kansas, in Wichita. And this is really exciting for me because, as I mentioned, the protocol is challenging. And so we want to take the guesswork out of it for you. We want to make an immersive experience. But not everybody's ready for that. Oh, I would much prefer that we put places like Marama out of business, that we don't need those anymore, because people are doing all the prevention at home. And it's not possible for everyone. So we're trying to make lots of options available so that you get the support that you need at home. That's the Marama at Home course, or you can take advantage of the fully immersive program at the Marama locations. So this is a typical day at Marama. Excuse me, I feel like I'm about to sneeze. This is a typical day at Marama where the whole day is built around optimizing your cognitive function. So this means everything in orange is the meals, and that's an organic ketogenic diet. And so I think of 4 pillars of Marama. One is the diet, the organic ketogenic diet. 2 is the environment, a non-toxic environment, part of which we'll talk about today. We're really going to dive into the detox, but we have a non-toxic brain healing environment. And then we have activities, both, you'll see those listed on here, both physical activities like the walk and our creative activities and brain engaging activities throughout the day, including great games, arts, meditation. So our 4 pillars are the diet, the environment, the exercise, both physical and cognitive. And then also we have caregivers who are trained to provide this really optimal care. They understand the supplements and the medications, when to give them, how to give them. They also expect our residents to get better. And we often, as humans, rise to that expectation that's set for us. Additionally, they prioritize connection over correction. So instead of thinking of people having, bad behavior or challenging behavior, we really are looking to see, based on the work of Teepa Snow and many others, Joanne Koenig-Kostick, who wrote Learning to Speak Alzheimer's, we've used those concepts to provide the best possible care for your loved one who might be at Marama. And that means meeting them where they are, making them feel loved and cared for, and making sure it's not important if they forgot something, or if they don't remember a conversation, or if they think that they're talking to their mom who's been dead for 20 years. That's okay. It's connection, and that is what is the most healing for their brain. So today, we're going to dive into the detox. So let's talk about basics. So when we think about detoxification for our body, I think first of the organs of elimination, and there's 5 of them. And I'm going to give you some kind of general things to think about and maybe even ask your provider about. Lots of doctors, especially if they're naturopaths like me, or if they've been trained by Dr. Bredesen, are going to be really familiar with these concepts and these ideas, and even some of these things that you can do. Take a picture of this slide because this is an important one. And these are things that you can think of for yourself, think through for yourself in a systematic way. All right, am I having a bowel movement every day? That is critical for my detoxification. So much waste is eliminated through our bowels. So having one healthy, well-formed, easy to pass bowel movement per day is a minimum. Some people have 2 or 3. Now, if you start having diarrhea or constipation, this is worth talking to a provider about. You may also, if you know that you have elevated levels of toxicity, either from heavy metals or mold or chemicals, while you're working on eliminating that exposure, you can add certain binders. So binders are, I think of them like a catcher's mitt in the bowel. They glom on, they catch that bile. Bile is that toxic sludge that comes out of our gallbladder that our liver produces when it's detoxifying for us, when it's detoxifying our blood. And so if you can catch that, then you are able to get rid of it, eliminate it. It's out of your body if you have a bowel movement. Now, binders can sometimes help to bulk our stool. Things like fiber or psyllium can help to make sure that we have that bowel movement. This, by the way, also helps to lower cholesterol levels. So if you're concerned about cholesterol, adding binders can be really helpful, and it can also be helpful for reducing toxicity. So that daily bowel movement, really important. And then you'll see on this slide, I've listed cholestyramine, or CSM is how I abbreviate that. It's a long mouthful, cholestyramine. That's very specific to one of our mycotoxins that we measure, which is called ochratoxin. Clay, charcoal, and chlorella are more general, but these things, they can sometimes start to bind you up and cause constipation. So you want to be careful with those, work with a provider, and maybe even match that particular toxin that you have elevated with the specific binder that has the most binding affinity. It's basically the best catcher's mitt for that particular toxin. And when we can do this, we can really accelerate that detox process and remove toxins more effectively and efficiently from your body so that they're not keeping you in that defend and attack mode. Dr. Bredesen has this phenomenal analogy. If you think of your brain like a country, my Brainistan, if your brain is attacking and defending you against toxins all the time, it's not going to build new neurons. Just like if you're a country at war defending yourself against an invader, you're not going to be building roads and schools. Your brain has to do a similar calculation, all without you even having to think about it, around how it's going to spend its resources. And so if you're spending nutrients and energy defending against those toxins, you're not spending it creating new neurons and new connections between them. So when we get rid of those toxins, it makes a huge difference in how our brain works. So our organs of elimination, you can see them listed here: the bowels, which we've gone through, the liver, the kidneys, skin and lymphatics, and then the lungs. And the liver, what we typically, the limiting factor there are things like the nutrients that are necessary for phase 2 liver support. The body is miraculous. Like, it still blows my mind. I've been obsessed with this stuff for decades now. And yet every time I think about the brilliance of the liver, it is just, I like have reverence for the body and this divine design. The liver will actually stop phase 1 metabolism if you don't have enough of these phase 2 nutrients. These phase 2 nutrients are typically the limiting step. And these are things like N-acetylcysteine, which is listed here, NAC, you may have heard it called, B vitamins, glutathione, which is abbreviated here as GSH. This is 3 amino acids that are, one of which is cysteine and N-acetylcysteine. Phosphatidylcholine can be very helpful. Amino acids can be very helpful. If you don't have enough of those phase 2 liver nutrients, then in your body's brilliance, it stops phase 1. And that's because that intermediate step between phase 1 and phase 2 is often more toxic. The classic example of this is alcohol when we drink some alcohol, turns into acetaldehyde after phase 1 liver detox. And then it has to go through phase 2. So what gives us a hangover, what makes us feel really crappy after drinking, is acetaldehyde. It is more toxic than the actual alcohol we drank. Many pharmaceuticals are turned on this way through phase 1 liver detox. And if we don't have those phase 2 nutrients, we will just stop the whole process completely. That means there's more toxins circulating in your bloodstream because the liver isn't doing its job. And this can happen in a few ways. If you don't have a bowel movement, you may actually absorb toxins again. So now the liver is taking out yesterday's trash in addition to today's. So that's why those bowel movements are really important. If you don't have enough phase 2 detox support, you're going to have more circulating toxins because your body stops phase 1 detox. And then if you have a lot of exposure, if you say, you live next to a freeway, or you're living or working in a moldy or water damaged building, you are going to have more toxins coming into the system than your body can possibly deal with. So we want to stop the exposure. And we want to support the bowels and the liver and the kidneys. So the kidneys, they really benefit from water. Now, make sure you chat with a provider, because if you are struggling with kidney issues, you can get too much water. For the most part, though, people don't get enough water. And I really emphasize the quality of that water. Now, I'm here in Southern California in San Diego at the end of the river, right? So everything that's coming to San Diego and ends up in our city water is typically contaminated, and it takes a lot to get those contaminants out. And so I opt for spring water most of the time. We're very lucky that Carlsbad Spring is here close by, and it has very good high quality water. There's a website called findaspring.com, F-I-N-D-A spring, S-P-R-I-N-G, findaspring.com. That's a really helpful way to find the nearest good high quality water source near you if your county or city water isn't that great. Sometimes you can taste it, and you can even do a taste test between the different waters available in the store. I highly recommend sticking with the ones that come in glass. So glass, ceramic, or stainless. Otherwise, drinking things out of drinking water, or really anything out of plastic, really puts you at risk of being exposed to that plastic. Sometimes you can taste plastic in the water if it's sat in the sun, and even just opening and closing and the way that those plastic bottles are formed, they do expose you to plastics, which we want to be avoiding. And then the skin and lymph, this is the spa day for everyone. So if you want an excuse to go to the spa, tell everyone in your family, tell your spouse that I said it was time, that I am recommending that you get a lymphatic massage. Lymphatic drainage is a phenomenal way to detoxify. Just make sure that you're having those bowel movements and you have that liver support, because the lymph empties into the liver. So that's another way, through the blood and through the lymphatics, is how those toxins arrive at the liver to be processed. And you can move these around through vibration plates, through chi machines, through sweating, through dry skin brushing, contrast hydrotherapy, and there's even herbs. If you work with a good naturopath or an herbalist or nutritionist, they can turn you on to great herbs that really help with the skin and lymph. The other thing to remember is that we absorb things through our skin. In my office every day, I prescribe medications like hormones that are actually applied topically through lotion. And with that, that makes us realize, right, when we are exposed to other things that we put on our skin, whether they are lotions or perfumes or conditioners, whatever it is that we're putting on, face moisturizers and sunscreens and aftershave and shaving cream, all of these things get absorbed at some level into our skin. So we want to be really careful. Makeup, and it's a big one. In the US, there's not a lot of legislation around what you can and can't put in makeup. And even though we're absorbing it every day, potentially through our skin, they never tell you what's in there. There's no nutrition facts on makeup, and there can be lead and all kinds of parabens and phthalates and crazy chemicals. So be careful about the brands you use and what's included in there. That's a great way to eliminate and reduce the toxic exposure. The lungs get forgotten all the time. Lungs are a phenomenal detox organ. Again, I'm going to go back to the classic toxin, alcohol. And you are aware that a cop can pull you over if they think you've been drinking, and they can do a breathalyzer test. That breathalyzer test is that we are exhaling the alcohol toxins, the acetaldehyde. And so the breath, the lungs are a way that we get rid of aerosolized toxins that are in our blood. And using these organs, using the lungs, using the skin, the lymph, the kidneys, the liver, the bowels, what we're doing is we're distributing the toxins to multiple organs. And if we can really optimize one, then we are reducing the burden on the other ones, right? And I think the lungs are underutilized. So many of us have trouble taking those nice, big, deep diaphragmatic breaths. And I would encourage you to take a moment right now to have one. There's also a phenomenal book called Breath by James Nestor that I highly, highly recommend, that helps us to appreciate the quality of breath and the importance of it, and just how much it can change our lives. It's one of these vital things that we do every day that we actually have control over. We don't have as much control over our heart rate or different kind of natural things that happen, but we have a ton of control over our lungs each day. Okay, so environmental medicine, I kind of mentioned this, but the first step I think of as an environmental medicine doctor, somebody who treats toxicity, is stopping the exposure, right? And again, this is common sense, but sometimes uncommon practice, and sometimes really challenging to put into practice. So mycotoxins, some of these toxins we'll go through, mycotoxins come from mold or water damaged buildings, most typically. So this is what I often will see, is that there's a leak behind the fridge and it takes, a long time to find it, or there's a small leak under the sink, or, there was it rained and there was a really small hole and nobody knew about it. But sure enough, lo and behold, months later, there was a massive mold problem that no one realized was there. That can lead to very high levels of mycotoxins, which are directly neurotoxic. One of the first and most common symptoms that people experience with exposure to mold is, most of us, I think respiratory. Oh, it must be allergies or a cough or lung issues. It's often cognitive decline. It's brain fog and fatigue and that lack of mental stamina. And treating this can be highly, highly effective in terms of getting your brain and cognition back. Heavy metals are another one. Mercury in particular is directly neurotoxic, very, very harmful, especially to the myelin sheath, or that fatty sheath that protects the neurons. So this is something, if it's there, we want to get rid of it, particularly if you are struggling with cognitive issues. Cadmium, arsenic, lead, aluminum, these are other ones that we can look for and bind and get out of your system. There are very safe and effective ways to bind these. You don't necessarily need a chelating agent or an IV or anything expensive or risky or dangerous. We can bind these, just like I was describing in the bowel, with that catcher's mitt that's very specific to those metals. And so that's a great way to do it and get rid of these things gently without any risk to your bones or your kidneys. Chemical toxins come up. I'm about to share an example with you of someone who had very high levels of glyphosate, or the chemical found in Roundup, and getting him on a non-toxic organic diet and having him stop spraying it in his yard was very effective in bringing those levels down. It's a water-soluble toxin, and so drinking water really helps. And a supplement or an amino acid called glycine and glyphosate, they sound similar because they are biochemically similar. Those are very effective in getting that glyphosate down. So we also measure 19 other chemical toxins. And when we know what's there, it can help us do that detective work of figuring out which one where it might be coming from and how we can effectively get rid of that exposure. I mentioned alcohol several times, particularly in that retirement phase when we're kicking our feet up and happy hour seems to get earlier and earlier. As we age, it can be challenging to not indulge too much, whether it's TV watching or having more and more alcohol. And so it's really important to be moderating that, making sure we're not having too much. And then particularly if you're struggling with cognitive issues, to potentially think about eliminating it altogether. And especially if toxicity is part of the picture for you. Personal care products. I talked about this briefly in terms of makeups, lotions, hair dye, conditioner, shampoo, all the things that we put on our bodies, particularly as women, being really cautious about where those are coming from. And it might not mean that you throw away everything today, but more that as you run out of something, you replace it with something that's non-toxic. I really like the Beauty Counter products. I also like the Ilia brand, ILIA. That's a nice one. And EO, so we have a lot of lists of resources and stuff like that. And you're more than welcome to reach out if you want some ideas about what kind of things that you can use in terms of personal care products or cleaning products. Cleaning products I love are BioClean. BioClean is one of my favorite, and they have all the detergents, lots of other things. So what do we do for treatment? We talked a lot about that on the last slide, but we can go through those emunctories. So that's our fancy word in naturopathic medicine for those organs of elimination. And then the number one thing, again, 75% of environmental medicine is identifying that exposure and stopping it. If it's not coming into the system, our body's amazing. It has so many pathways out, and it will be there for you. It will do the hard work of getting rid of it. It's just a matter of identifying that exposure, and then maybe even optimizing and accentuating and supporting and facilitating all of those natural processes so that it happens sooner and you get the relief that you're looking for. All right, so this is Lou. He's a patient who I saw a couple years ago, such a great guy. I absolutely love him. He had some of the highest levels of mycotoxin. So that's what we're looking at here. This is a mycotoxin test, and it has before and after. So I started seeing him in September of 2020, and you can see his ochratoxin levels were at about 20. I mean, they were so crazy high. And his gliotoxin levels were over 12. His aflatoxin levels were over 5. And his trichothecene levels were low. But these are 4 different types of mycotoxins that we routinely test. We actually test one more, and it's down on another page, so it's not on this picture. But we test 5 of them. And his levels, when I first saw him in September of 2020, were the highest I'd ever seen. And these might still be among the highest I have ever seen. And what you can see went drastically down. And in that time, the trichothecene goes up, but this graph is a little deceiving because there's the order of magnitude is way higher in terms of that drop in ochratoxin and that drop in gliotoxin. His trichothecenes just probably came up because he was able to start getting rid of more of them as we got rid of the ochratoxin and the gliotoxin so significantly. His aflatoxin came down, not as much, but what you can see on the right side there is that his MoCA score, or that Montreal Cognitive Assessment that we use to test his cognition, is already going up. So we didn't get rid of everything. We weren't able to get rid of all of that aflatoxin. He still has a significant amount, but his cognition is already improving. Again, 3 months after we started working together, he had a glyphosate or Roundup level of nearly 6. He was at 5.7. Again, this is one of the higher ones I've ever seen. And he had that level down to 0.85, which is about where mine is. That's usually where it sits for people who aim to eat organic. We can't avoid it completely. I think I've only ever seen one glyphosate test that was below detectable. So we all are exposed to it. It's really that amount that we're exposed to that can potentially be really, really harmful. And so we want to minimize it as much as humanly possible. And you can see again, we were bringing these toxins down, and Lou was getting better and better cognitively. His family had a really interesting story. When I started seeing him, his daughter was living in the Midwest. I think she was in Oklahoma. And she and her family, she had young kids, and her husband, I think he was from Oklahoma, they were going to move back to San Diego to help care for Lou. They had a whole plan to move into his property, build a place on him, build a kind of like an ADU, a granny flat for her and her kids and her husband. And it was going to be kind of a mess. They were just feeling really overwhelmed. She was working full time, as many daughters who have a parent with Alzheimer's are. They're managing their kids and their lives. And she was willing to, really sacrifice a lot to move across the country to care for Lou. Well, By the time she got here, he had turned around so significantly that he was still driving. He was driving again, and he was able to help her with the kids. He was helping pick them up and drop them off at school and care for them after school, so that she actually was grateful she had moved because of the support she got from her dad, that it wasn't that she had to do more work taking care of him, but that he was able to help take care of her by helping take care of her kids. I mean, really, really fun, total shift in their trajectory and their potential story. So detoxifying sugar, this is the next thing to think about. And I've put on here the soulsary.com web address, because if you are interested in the ketogenic diet, one, we do webinars about it all the time. So you're welcome to join us for the next one there. But changing up the fuel can be challenging. So we have a diet guide, a free keto diet guide that's available on the website. Just go put your email address in there and we'll send you the PDF right away. But this is really fun. I love being in ketosis. I personally get another hour and a half back in my day because I wake up ready for the day at 5 a.m. versus struggling to get out of the bed at 6:30. And my patients tell me over and over again how effective this is for cognition. We see it at Marama all the time. And in our webinars, in our coaching program, we see people, like, you can just watch their faces change and their engagement change as they start getting their ketone levels up. So it's fun and exciting and wonderful, and there's tons of support to help you. But I just want to make sure that we mention that, because part of toxicity is glycotoxicity. It's having too much sugar in your system. And this is why Alzheimer's is sometimes referred to as type 3 diabetes. Type 3 diabetes is Alzheimer's. It's because that glucose and also insulin can be really hard on the brain. And we get an increase in both insulin and glucose as we go in the direction of diabetes, and they're not being utilized. So there's more of them in the blood, but they're not being utilized to turn that glucose into fuel. So we want to switch up the fuel to ketones and get the benefits of that. All right, detoxifying your environment. So we talked a little bit about this in terms of maybe not spraying glyphosate, but we can take that a step further. The detergents and the toxicity of all of the things in our homes, even just opening doors and windows. Indoor air quality is always going to be lower than outdoor air quality. One of my teachers, environmental medicine teachers, the late Dr. Walter Krenian, he always said, the solution to pollution is dilution. So the great opportunity to take advantage of that is to open doors and windows and let fresh air into your home. And then, of course, don't bring in the toxic things. So if you need to paint, get that low or no VOC paint. Get things, if you're thinking about changing out the floors at the clinic here, we have these cork floors that are non-toxic. They don't have glues. They don't have anything in them that's going to leach and detoxify or air off gas the way like a lot of carpets do. And so just thinking about that as you think about building materials, even furniture, anything that you bring into your home that might be off-gassing. Also, taking your shoes off at the door is a great way to reduce the amount of chemicals that come in. People spray, in HOAs and in lots of business parks and wherever you are, if there's a sidewalk, often they're spraying the sidewalk with Roundup or other herbicides to keep those plants from growing between the cracks on the sidewalk. And if we track those into our house, outside it rains, so those toxins get washed away, but inside it never rains. And so they can accumulate to higher and higher levels. The best thing to do, just make it a habit. Take your shoes off at the door. And then thinking through your environment in terms of clutter, getting rid of clutter. You don't have to do it overnight. You don't have to do it all in one go, but creating a plan, particularly if you've lived in your house, as many of my patients have lived in their homes for 50, 60 years. They've raised children there. They've spent a lifetime in their homes and they have accumulated some stuff. And so getting rid of that, decluttering is very helpful for the mind, and also gives us that chance to like rest. When we see packages or things piled up on shelves or on countertops, it gives us the sense that there's something to do. Detox that stuff, get rid of it. And then just detoxifying from from scents, like things, any artificial scents that might be in air fresheners, using just natural scents, making sure distractions are to a minimum. I recommend the IQ Air, the GC Multi by IQ Air. I think it's the best air filter on the market. They do not pay me to say that. They just have a really good high quality thing. I want to save you the time of trying to find one or the cost of buying one that's not as good. The GC Multi by IQ Air is a very high quality air filter that makes a big difference in many people's health and their allergies and lots of things. And then feel free to take a picture of this one too. These are some tips that we'll go through in the Marama at Home course if you're interested, but I want to just make sure that you have some actionable things that you can do today. Meditation is a phenomenal way to detox your mind. Make sure that your brain is going in that positive direction that supports cognition, that supports neurotransmitter synthesis and and also neuron synthesis, neuronal growth and connections. The Kirtan Kriya is the one that I recommend most. It's easily available on YouTube. You'll see this picture, the Satanama, 12 minutes, very cost effective because it's free, very time effective because it's only 12 minutes. And it's been successfully used to improve memory in many studies of people with cognitive decline. And this means not only subjective cognitive impairment, but mild cognitive impairment, measurable cognitive impairment, and also for caregivers. It improves sleep, decreases depression, reduces anxiety, downregulates immune issues and inflammation, upregulates the immune system, improves insulin and glucose sensitivity, and increases telomerase, or that end cap that protects your DNA. So this is an absolutely, this gets better results. Kirtan Kriya for 12 minutes a day gets better results on cognition than any single one of the very expensive, fancy new IV drugs for Alzheimer's, the aducanumab or the lecanemab. And that, this alone is better than any of the results that they get with those expensive drugs. Yes, that is true. And so this actually increases cognition, where these other ones, those medications, what they do is they reduce the rate of getting worse. So they make you get worse more slowly. They draw out that torturous process of Alzheimer's, where this improves quality of life. It's totally free. You can do it from the comfort of your own home. It only takes 12 minutes. And it detoxes your mind from all that extra clutter and negativity. I highly recommend it. Okay, so I wanted to share a quick story about Richard. His big thing in terms of toxins was sugar. He was addicted to sugar and he was on the verge of diabetes. He was pre-diabetic when I saw him, but the sugar issue was clearly playing a role in his cognition. His daughter explained to me that they would be driving by fields. They lived in a rural area. They would be driving by fields and he wouldn't remember the names of cows or horses or sheep, of like common farm animals. He couldn't come up with the names. He also was struggling to remember his grandchildren's names. And sure enough, after just a few weeks in ketosis, he was remembered the names of farm animals and all of his grandkids. The sad part for Richard was that some of his grandkids and children, adult children, were not as invested as this particular daughter was. And so they would come into town and they would take him out for pizza and ice cream. And sure enough, what would happen is that he would forget the farm animals' names and he would forget his grandkids' names. And this went back and forth a couple times and was so frustrating for the daughter. But eventually Richard recognized what was going on, and so did the other siblings. And so they were all able to support him. And watching that really clear association between ketone levels, blood sugar levels, and cognition was not only fascinating for them, but profoundly hopeful and profoundly exciting to see him get that extra benefit. And so I want to make sure that you can too. I want to share one more coaching win and then share more about what we are offering here in terms of coaching. So Joe was in our most recent coaching course. We've had 75 people, maybe a little bit more than that. We've had 3 groups of 25 to 30 go through this coaching course with us, the online live 12-week coaching course. And in this last one, Joe was with us, and he was an engineer who is so dedicated. I'm so inspired by him and his dedication to his wife. He created this amazing spreadsheet, which we're happy to share with you. He was happy to share it with everyone, because it was the tool that he used to organize himself around getting in all of these aspects of the Bredesen protocol into a week. Like, how do we do this? What do we do? What are the practical things that we need to have happening? And how do we get where we need to go, or have the right people come to us to support our cognition? And so this is one of these tools that you will have access to. And also, it's one of these magic things that comes out of creating community through these groups, through these group coaching courses, is that you see what other people are doing. You get to hear the questions you didn't know you had answered. And you get to see people like Joe, who are so inspiring, their dedication to their loved ones, but also the pragmatic ways that you can implement this and the tools that you can share with each other and help and support each other along the way. And so we are, Joe's story, the last day of our last class together, he asked me, what is it like for someone with dementia like my wife has? Can they travel? Can they get on a plane for 10 hours and go somewhere? And my recommendation was that he not take his wife on a big vacation, on a big trip like that, because it can be so disorienting. And then, of course, he followed it up with, well, it's for our son's wedding. Can she go? And these absolutely impossible situations, I'm sure many of you can relate to, of these just the Sophie's choice of this impossible decision that you have to make, where do I disorient my wife, potentially have her go backwards, or do we show up together at our son's wedding that is halfway around the world? And these super challenging decisions that so many people, so many families who are suffering with Alzheimer's face, you don't have to do that alone. You don't have to make that decision on your own or feel like you are the only one in that situation. When we develop these communities, there's other people to bounce these ideas off of, to kind of brainstorm with around solutions. By the time we finished that call, Joe had decided that he was going to ask his son if they could do 2 ceremonies, one in South America and one in Spain, where they are. And this was, he hadn't thought of this. He didn't have the creativity and like the mind space to be thinking of that. And yet by the time we got off the call, he was ready to ask his son and his future daughter-in-law if they were willing to do that for the sake of his wife and her health. And sure enough, they were. And that came out of a brainstorming session in one of these coaching calls. So really, I hope that this is very encouraging, very supportive. And what we've designed is basically a venue and a place where you can feel supported by community and get the answers you're looking for. Know you're doing all you can to support your loved one's cognition and your own. So there's an 11-module caregiver training course, and there's a 30-day risk-free money-back guarantee. So I want to take all of the risk out of this for you. I never want you to sit in confusion again. I want you to feel fully supported. This is available. We are about to start. And gosh, Tyler, if you're there, would you please add to the chat when we are starting? Because I'm not even remembering the day. I think it's in 2 weeks. We're on the first week of May, and I think we're starting mid-May. We're going to do Wednesday afternoons Pacific time. We're going to have these 12 weeks of coaching, group coaching with me available. And so there's 12 live coaching sessions. These are a ton of fun. They're my favorite part of the week. It's so collaborative, so fun. I get to watch people week over week make so much progress. And so we can't wait to have you join us. And then there's a private Facebook group where you get to ask those questions that maybe come up at midnight when we're not on that call. You get to bounce ideas off of people in the community, people who have come before you, maybe even answer the questions of people who Bredesen protocol. So this is a really fun piece of it that gives you some extra access. And then you get a one-on-one call with me. I'm no longer taking new patients. So this is the way to have that conversation. I love, love, love these because I love understanding who everyone is, what the dynamics are, what challenges you're facing at home, and figuring out what we can do to solve them. This is a great place and a great venue to prioritize, what is the most important thing for me? Where do I start? Because a lot of people feel overwhelmed by this program and want that extra guidance in determining how to make it precision-based and really individualize it for them. So you get to join this priceless community. When we set goals together, we are much, much more likely to achieve them. When we write them down in our own handwriting, and then when we have a group of people to hold us accountable, we are so much more likely to accomplish those goals. So let us be your partners in this. You will meet accountability partners, you might meet soulmates, you will find meetup partners, you will find people who will support you in making this a reality. So we can't wait to have you join us. So the Mom at Home course has a $497 value. Coaching with me has a $6,000 value. Private Facebook group has a $500 value. That call with me has a $900 value. And that's a total of $7,897. And we are offering that right now for only $24.97. We have 80,000 people on our email list, and you signed up for this webinar. You're one of the first to know about this. And we have a new summit starting in mid-June, as I shared. So we're expecting another 80,000 people to sign up for that summit. And so we will hopefully be offering this to them in the future. And so this is a chance. We have capped this at 25 people and we already are halfway full. So we have I think 12 spots left. So if you want to take advantage of this, make sure you do it today, because this is going to fill up fast. And in June, in July, we'll probably start the next round. We'll start another session. That is going to fill up even faster because there's going to be so many more people that are aware of it after the next summit. So make sure that you take advantage of this. Some quick things that people have said. This has been a blessing already. I got through the crisis, and now we are moving into restoring autonomy and finding balance in our relationship and routine at home. Having the summit plus Marama at Home plus the coaching has given us the resources to know what steps to take next and put the knowledge to work at home. That was from Shelley, one of the people in our first class. And from Richard, said the program is brilliant. It's already started helping me to get more organized and prioritize. My days are already different. We are both doing the meditation daily now, and it is working. I feel so much better as a caregiver, and I already see her changing. From Peter, I think I mentioned this to you. We hear this from lots of people. I love the questions from other people on the coaching calls. I get answers to questions I didn't even realize I had. We've sold out the last 3 groups, and people are already signed up for this group. And so please, if you are looking for support like this, please sign up now, because these spots will go quickly. So this is starting again, if you wouldn't mind adding that, Tyler. It is starting mid-May, and we want to make sure that you have access. So if you are like, if you're like Sharon, she's a nurse, she's a registered nurse, and she lost her mom to Alzheimer's. She really wants to make sure that the nurses who she teaches, who are coming through behind her, that they have the training for the latest in the science, and they know how to educate their patients and let them know how much agency, how much choice they have in whether or not they go down the path of Alzheimer's. So Sharon really wants to help others avoid the demise that her mom went through. And she's also learning for herself because she's ApoE4 positive. She says, I've enjoyed our sessions tremendously. I've learned so much that is so practical and that I can implement in my day-to-day. Thank you for offering these classes. And then from another participant from our course said, I am loving Sorry, I'm reading her note here. I'm loving the class. Thank you for offering it. This has been on my mind for years. Oh, sorry, I think this was Sharon. Excuse me. I'm a nurse and focused on older adults in my capstone paper. I love learning about the brain and love being with older adults. I had 3 children and I have been extremely focused on them for a long time, but something about helping older adults is so important to me. This is bigger than just my mom alone. This is a humanitarian issue. I love that I'm learning more, using the data to drive what we do so we aren't in the dark guessing. I love focusing on what will actually get us results. If you want to feel like Sharon and feel like you're getting the results, that you're going in the right direction, this course might be for you. I have noticed, so many people get their lives back. That's what they tell us. And I was at a funeral not that long ago. Unfortunately, a friend of mine, her husband died tragically in a car accident, and his brother was giving a really beautiful eulogy. And at the end of it, he was describing these very unique text messages that his brother would send him that were long and funny and just very classically pat. And he said, what I would give anything to get one more of those text messages. And instantly I thought, gosh, that's what we do. That's what we're doing at Marama. That's what we do here at Solseri. And that's what these coaching courses do, is they are that anything that gets you back one more anniversary, one more birthday, one more summer, one more season where your loved one remembers names, can engage in conversation. This is that anything. And I think so few people understand how much control they have over this, that there is a lot you can do. And it's not for everyone. It takes work. It takes a ton of work. And I shared with you Richard's story about the farm animals and his grandkids' names. And he does better, and then sometimes he doesn't. And there are times when families throw in the towel. It's just too much. And that's okay. It's not for everyone, but everyone should know there's an option. And you should know not only is there an option, not there only are there things that can be done, but there is support for you to get it done. So Lisa had the experience of going through her father's slow, painful downhill trajectory with Alzheimer's. And she watched her mom struggle to take care of her dad. And then when her mom couldn't do it anymore, she tried to step in. And she has 2 daughters and a son, and she doesn't want them to go through what she did. She is fully committed to taking really good care of her brain so that they don't have to go through the 7 years of slow, painful decline that her dad went through, supporting her. And she has a ApoE3/4 genetic risk. And so she gets that she needs to work harder than her husband and maybe harder than her neighbor, but she is signed up and ready to take it all on and do the work so that her children don't feel the burden of taking care of her the way she did with her dad. So what you will see when you log in, you'll log in on this page once you're signed up for the course. And then once you're in, you will watch the module. Let me know what you think. Give us some feedback there. But there's Marama at Home Caregiver Training is available to you immediately. And then in 2 weeks, we start our coaching calls, our Q&A. There's the Facebook group. You can put questions in there. You'll do live Q&A with me, and the coaching there. If you need somebody to hold your feet to the fire, I'm your girl. Other people in the course will do it for you too. Then you're going to learn from me the exact steps you need to take and the specific instructions so that you can do all of this at home, so that you never need a place like Marama for you or your family members. You'll do the exercises in the module to prepare for our weekly calls. And then together as a group, I'm here to answer the questions for you. You guys are the inspiration. I couldn't be more grateful that you show up. We had over 200 people show up today for this. And the people who show up here, it's your care and your dedication, your commitment to learning, your perseverance, the love that you give your family members, and your attention to this that is going to change the tide, that's going to shift the tsunami of people who are approaching the age at which they get dementia. And I couldn't be more grateful for you showing up and doing this with me. Thank you so, so much. All right, I'm going to switch into taking questions. All right, so in the Q&A, besides P. gingivalis, what are the other 3 oral pathogens that I would look for? Oral pathogens, you probably want to chat with a dentist. And actually on the summit, there is a dentist who's there. I'm not overly familiar with 3 other pathogens. P. gingivalis is the one that comes up most frequently and it's easiest for me to test to. So that's the one I look at. And then for more information, more detail on that, talk to a dentist, and a biological dentist is best. From Chris, I have a strong belief that the studio I work in has mold toxicity. What is the best test I can order to do that? I need to do it for myself and then show the landlord. What I recommend that's easiest and least expensive is immunolytics. And that is, I think, the best way to test it and kind of have a good understanding. There are also ERMI test and HERTSMI testing that is available in some areas. And so that's another option. Oh, thank you, Tyler, for putting in the immunolytics link. So if you look in the chat, Chris, the immunolytics link is there. Just be careful that you don't take their interpretation. They can be a little bit alarmist. So you want to have a trained provider maybe look through that report with you and make sure that it's meaningful, because often immunolytics will tell you that everything is meaningful. There's a little bit more nuance to how to interpret that, but it's inexpensive. It's a plate, so it's really accessible and really inexpensive. There's just nuance in how you interpret the data. From an anonymous attendee, does consumption of a lot of processed sugars and desserts come into play here? 100% yes, it does. And so that's what we're talking about, a sugar detox and getting on the organic ketogenic diet. Yes, 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 yes. And please come to the next keto webinar, download that keto diet guide, because that is how you get rid of that glycotoxicity, that toxicity that comes from too much sugar, too many desserts, all those things that cause foggy brain and Alzheimer's. Do I have a list of safe personal hygiene brands and safe household cleaning brands that we have access to? No, I kind of listed some off. Tyler, were you able to hopefully throw some of those in the chat? It changes so often that I don't have like a comprehensive list, but thank you for asking, because we're putting together resource sheets and I will add that. And then also, just so all of you who are here, who stuck in here with me this long, I didn't put this as a benefit of the course, but one of the things that we're doing is we're putting together a tech application right now, and we are going to ask the 75, 80 people who have come before you, plus your group, to beta test the app for us. And what it's going to be is a daily schedule, and there will be on their resources and a store where you can basically be connected to buying the things that we endorse, so that it takes that guesswork out of it for you. And that daily schedule is what I understand from so many of my coaching clients, my patients, from so many people, is that it's like, I get it, just tell me what to do and when. And so that's what we're going to provide for you on the app. There's going to be recipes for breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, plus links to meditation, the meditations that we recommend, the activities, the creative activities, and the brain games and the brain engagement. And those are going to be available. And we're basically going to be asking this group of pioneers to beta test that for us. So you'll get that for free. So that will be part of the package that comes with coaching. Can any physician order toxic blood levels, and is Medicare covering the cost? So great question, Nicole. I use real-time labs for mycotoxin testing, and they are covered by Medicare. And they are actually expanding their testing to include chemical toxins and glyphosate, I think in like the next month or two. And so I'm hoping those will also be covered by Medicare. You don't typically get toxins tested unless they're egregiously high. You can do some blood levels of heavy metals, but they're not always the best way to look for metals. Some people do hair testing, some people do urine testing, some people do provoke testing. I use Quicksilver for measuring heavy metals, and that does not get covered by Medicare. But I think that the cost for the amount of information is really good. And then real time does get covered. So Karen is asking, what company was the mycotoxin test you presented in this presentation done through? It's real time. They're out of Dallas, Texas, or they might be like just outside of Dallas. So it might say a different name of the city on their website, but they're in Texas, maybe Plano. And I've been working with them for the past like 8 or 10 years. They do a fantastic job. They're very consistent. There's some other mold testing companies, mycotoxin testing companies out there, and I have found that they are less consistent. They tend to be more expensive, and they're just not as reliable. Have you ever had, so from Doreen, have you ever had a client who suffers from head pain? My husband with dementia daily complains of 2 enemies fighting in the front of his head with the pain he's feeling. And this has been that case for 7 years. We give him Tylenol, but it is more than just a headache. Okay, so a couple things there. One, Tylenol is really hard on your liver and your detox pathways. It halves the amount of glutathione that you have. So make sure you're maybe supporting his glutathione a little bit in one way or another. And then Doreen, if you have access to a Bredesen trained provider, I would have him get the cognoscopy or all of those, the labs basically that tell us what might be causing that headache, because it could be a headache, be a traumatic brain injury. It could be coming from sleep apnea. I'm not sure what's causing the headache, but that's going to be the most important thing. And it's likely that whatever's causing the headache is also contributing to the dementia process. So figuring out the why is the most important question in my mind. Hi from Chicago. I was at your last seminar. Primary care physician has him on Miralax. She would not consider any alternatives. Also, he wakes up every couple hours to urinate. He might have sleep apnea. What do you suggest for his bowels, better sleep, and how do I approach his doctor? Carol, this is such a good conversation, and there's so much to this. And I think that probably working with either directly with the Bredesen trained coach, it's not my capacity right now to become his doctor. And so talking through the potential different, I think she's using Miralax as a laxative, talking through the different things, options there, and then also his prostate health, potentially what's waking him up at night. Is it the urination or is it potentially something else? And then he just gets up to pee because he's awake. The apnea, what I would suggest based on what you have here is get him to a sleep doctor. And if he has apnea, get that treated immediately. Treat that like a mild brain injury every night. Chris, I hope you're still here because we did get that answered. How often do you take binders per day, and when is best to take the binders? So I recommend people take binders just once a day. It doesn't have to be a particularly high dose. Consistency is key every single day, and it's best to take them either 2 hours after or 45 minutes before a meal, or actually 2 hours before and after is really what's best. 2 hours before, 2 hours after on an empty stomach. If you don't take thyroid in the morning, sometimes taking it right away on waking, particularly if you're intermittent fasting and you're waiting a while to have your first meal. If you don't take anything right away in the morning, that can be a good time. Or alternatively, if you don't take anything for sleep, then you could take it right before bed. The Bredesen protocol suggests that you have a 3-hour window between that last bite of food and going to bed. And so that right before you get into bed, if you can take that, that's a great time. From Mike, can you talk a little bit about amalgams, nonstick cookware, and how do I know the quality of my local water? Mike, these are great, great, great questions. And I wish we had way more time because these are all things that we do dive into in the course. Amalgam fillings, get them out. Use a biological dentist or somebody who at least uses that smart removal of mercury. There's a great talk on the summit that we just recorded that's going to be available in June. There's also tons of great, I think it's IMAOT, the Institute Mercury Amalgam Removal, but the SMART, SMART, it's an acronym for how biological dentists remove amalgams. Those are really important to get rid of. they're old. The dentists haven't been putting those in for over 20 years. And so anybody who has one, it's old. And by nature, those amalgams, they move, and they take them out. Now dentists who don't even say that mercury or amalgams are bad, they're like, oh, well, we take them out because they cause the teeth to crack. So it's not good for your teeth. But as they get older, every time you bite something hard or drink something hot, it is contributing to mercury in your system. Nonstick cookware is an absolute no-go. I recommend stainless steel and cast iron, and that's basically all that I will use. And how do I know the quality of my local water? You can have it tested. Third-party tested is the best way I know. What I typically do is I test people, and then I can see the pattern in their blood, in their urine, that they are being exposed to toxic water. And then I recommend spring water. That basically something that's bottled at the source in glass, because you are then getting it before it hits all the contamination of agriculture or treated water and all of that. Brian is taking care of a female who is 81 years old who only wants to eat ice cream and drink protein drinks. How do I change her diet? Oh, Brian, sounds like a project, but it is possible. And sometimes it requires a little bit of a detox, and there's some bumps along the way. And also it gets scary because you don't want people to lose weight. Many older women become quite frail. And so we want to keep the weight on them. And so I would highly recommend working with a provider. And this actually, Jeej, I can see your question coming up, that if somebody has low weight, should you do keto? Yes, I think you should still go in that keto direction, but work with the provider so that you can be using the hormones, especially testosterone, that will help you to build muscle. And then what you're doing is you're actually getting a kind of a reconfiguration of your body away from fat and towards more muscle. So you're going to hopefully put on some weight, but you're going to put on lean muscle weight that's going to keep you at lower risk of falls, make you stronger. And then also, of course, you're getting all of those benefits of muscle, which sends signals. Muscle is like an endocrine organ. It actually sends signals into the system that makes it healthier, including beating enough to the brain. So if she's only eating ice cream and a protein drink, I hope she has appetite, because if she has appetite, then basically you can just put other things in front of her and ice cream isn't available. What you might want to do is try like a keto ice cream for a little while and shift the type of ice cream. And then maybe even try making ice cream, but out of like veggies, avocado, maybe you even use banana, which isn't going to be keto yet, but you're kind of getting her taste buds to go in the direction of more fat and less sugar. Do I feel that long-term use of marijuana can cause cognitive decline? Yes, I do. Yeah, unfortunately, I know that it helps some people with sleep, with anxiety, but I prefer to use other things for sleep and anxiety outside of marijuana. Especially smoking marijuana can be so hard on your lungs, and there can be a lot of toxins. Remember, marijuana it's an agricultural product. So people spray, if they're growing it, they spray antifungals, they add pesticides and herbicides, especially if it's grown in like a mass greenhouse, and it's a monocrop. And so just be careful of where you're getting that in particular, because it might not just be the marijuana you're being exposed to. It might be all the pesticides and herbicides that are used on it. Is potassium a good supplement for these patients? It really depends, Karen. Sometimes potassium, all minerals are so important. So testing them is important. Do I have any thoughts on Great Plains Labs for mold testing? Yeah, they've been so inconsistent. They've changed their assay. They don't tell us. They won't retest people when they change the assay. And I've told people that their mold was gone, but it wasn't. Excuse me, rant over. Okay, I'm going to take one more question. From Karen, is it correct that estrogens, such as bioidentical hormone replacement, can cause thyroid hormones to be bound up and is not good in someone with hypothyroidism? Never heard that. Don't agree with that. Oh, and then here's what are my thoughts about the Oura Ring? I've got one on and I love mine, and it makes me go to sleep earlier, and it makes me in fact, it's telling me right now that would I like to stretch my legs. And the answer is yes. I'm going to go stretch my legs. And Ruth is saying, if I don't like Great Plains, who would I like? Real Time Labs. They're awesome. They help sponsor the summit. I love them. They're giving me some love back. Real Time Labs in Dallas or Plano, Texas. In Texas, they're the best. They've been the best for 8 years. They keep doing it consistently. All right, you guys, thank you so much. Such a pleasure. I'll be back next week to talk about loving communication and kindness and connection over correction. So appreciate you all being here. And hopefully I get to meet you and get to know you a little bit better in the coaching course. See you guys soon. Take care. Bye-bye.